Hey everyone, Cooper here, host of the fine podcast you're listening to. I just want to let you know that the episode you clicked on has a format that is very heavily inspired by a podcast called The Bookening. To be clear, our thoughts and opinions in this episode are our own, but the format is very similar to this podcast. I just wanted to give you a heads up and give credit where it is due. With that out of the way, enjoy the show. Coming up next, Booking It reads Hamlet. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Booking It. I'm of course your humble and eloquent host, Mr. Cooper Cobbs, and joining me today is my very good friend, Mr. Tanner Lewis.
Howdy, folks.
Well, hello everyone. I hope you guys are having a great April so far, and we are here today to discuss a piece of literature, a play, not a book. I know. We should call this episode Playin' It, or something like that. But anyway, before we dive into our discussion on Shakespeare and Hamlet, I wanted to talk about the episodes that we have coming up in our repertoire that are going to be releasing soon. So, this is episode 97, if you can believe it, 97. And next time, which will be in 2 weeks, we are discussing fantasy author Brandon Sanderson. So that discussion will be just kind of a broad, general discussion about the author. We're not going to be talking about any specific book, although all of us will have read at least a portion of one of his books, a significant portion. And we're not going to be spoiling anything in those books. We're just going to be talking about the author as a whole, kind of like we did last year with Indy Wilson, diving into writing, world building, characters, things like that. General things that you don't have to have read the books for, or read the books to kind of hear us talk about. So if you have read but are concerned about other spoilers, don't worry about that. If you haven't read, don't worry about that either. We'll be talking about whether you should read Sanderson or not, or things like that. So it's going to be a fun discussion. Please listen and share with your friends. And then next time, after Sanderson, we're talking about Fahrenheit 451 in episode 99. And I have just started rereading that, about halfway through it again. And I think it's going to be a really interesting read, especially in the modern times that we are living in. So, Tanner, have you read Fahrenheit 451 before?
I have not. It is definitely on my reading list.
For sure. Yeah. Well, it'll have to be because you're going to talk about it with us because it's going to be awesome. But
I know, but legitimately, it is on a list.
So. No, I agree. Yeah, this is one when the podcast doesn't overlap with our school books, which actually it does today. But when it doesn't, then we kind of look at, okay, this is kind of what we would like to read on our bucket lists. Let's do it for the podcast. So that's definitely one. Yeah, for sure. And then episode 100, to celebrate, we are having, hopefully, a Gandalf versus Dumbledore epic wizard debate. So me and Tanner will be on the side of Gandalf, Isaiah, and former panelist Matthew will be on the side of Dumbledore. And hopefully that'll happen. We'll have a cool format, cool debate, cool celebration of 100 episodes of Booking It. And that'll be a lot of fun. So that's kind of what we got coming up for the rest of the spring. And then hopefully I'll be able to do something cool for the summer. And then we'll kick it back off in the fall as well with some ancient literature. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the podcast year here, the summer, and hopefully next year as well. So that's kind of what we got coming up. Any thoughts, Tanner?
It's going to be great, guys. Come join us.
That's right. Come join. We always encourage people, read the books. Engage with us, because that's what this is about, really. So, well, today we are engaging with Hamlet. Some would say the greatest piece of literature ever written in the English language. And today, Tanner, we are discussing it in a very broad sense, a 30,000 foot sense, because that's the great thing about Shakespeare, really, is that you can discuss his play from that level, and then you can zoom way in and talk about all the characters, all the symbolism, do a line-by-line analysis, and then really get a lot out of it too. So just for time constraints and episode constraints, we can't do that, but just know that Hamlet and Shakespeare is deep and rich, but today we have to talk about it from a very, very broad view, but we'll still get a lot of good insights out of this, I think, too. So, well, Tanner, what is your baggage with the Bard, the immortal Bard, Mr. William Shakespeare, Bill Shakespeare, and the play Hamlet?
Okay. So, Shakespeare. I think that my first interaction with him was when my mom bought all of these like children's version of every single one of his plays. So, I think my first introduction to Shakespeare was those books, and my first introduction to Hamlet would necessarily be from those as well. But I think the like, where was I? Just like reading all of those, like it got me interested, but I wasn't like going to go like read Shakespeare. Thankfully,
Right.
school made me go read all of like tons of Shakespeare. And so I've been doing a persuasive writing class, Circe, on we've been doing all of Shakespeare, a lot of Shakespeare's works. And so Hamlet is actually one of like the one that we are discussing right now. So I'm working on an essay for this.
Cool. Well, you might have
Anyways.
to publish that when it's finished.
It will be interesting.
Yeah, it will. Well, I mean, I think Shakespeare is one of those people, and his works as well, where it's just kind of ubiquitous as you're growing up. You know, like I don't remember a time where I didn't know about Romeo and Juliet, you know, or I didn't know about Shakespeare as a thing. I would say though, probably my first introduction, I'm trying to like keep remembering. Okay, I know that memory, keep going further and further back, and I think that my first introduction was most definitely with the Magic Treehouse series. So I don't know if I've told this story before, but really my first introduction to reading on my own was the Magic Treehouse series. So when I was like 4, my mom would just start reading a book, and then I would just pick it up and finish it. It just kind of one of those things where she tried to read aloud, and I just kind of took over and went off. So that was kind of my first reading on my own experience, was that series and those books. And there was one early on about Shakespeare where, you know, they took the Magic Treehouse to Shakespeare's, theater and watched a play and talked to him and, you know, solved some kind of mystery or did some kind of adventure there. And that was probably my first introduction to Shakespeare, just the time period, who he was, that kind of thing. And then from there, you know, just little bits here and there. Like when I was probably 9 or 10, I did like an etiquette class, like a precursor to Cotillion. And we kind of, as for fun, acted out A Midsummer's Night Dream, a couple of scenes from that. And then just, you know, Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Macbeth, those kind of big plays have always just been, you know, cultural jokes and memes and cultural stories, really. So that's kind of been my baggage. And then, like Tanner said, school made us read Shakespeare, which, by the way, I'm not a huge fan. The first play we had to read for school was 2 years ago, and that was Taming of the Shrew, which, it's a funny play, but like when you want to introduce someone to one of the greatest writers of all time, do you start off with The Taming of the Shrew, you know, or do you start off with something different? Anyway, so that's what we read. And then this year we've been reading a lot of Shakespeare for CC, and Tanner's doing stuff for Circe. And this last Shakespeare book is Hamlet, so that's a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed Hamlet, so I'm excited to talk about it with you, Tanner. Well, I guess, what's your opening thoughts on Hamlet? I mean, pretty, you know, the thing that has been highly regarded as like the best ever for 400 years. It's pretty great, ironically, isn't it?
Yeah, it is pretty great. I just enjoy the way that he wrote it, like the way that the characters interact, and the kind of I don't know, depth that each character has, right? I think that Shakespeare does that so well compared to other writers, right? Like every other, I don't know. I feel like out of all of the real like literature that I've read, I think that Shakespeare's plays just have such, like, at least the main characters, like 3 or 4 main characters, just so rich and deep.
Yeah, they're so, like, the thing about Shakespeare as well is that they're nuanced and complex. Like, they're really, you would think that there's a black and white character, but really, like, there's not a lot of black and white characters, and that's kind
Was
of what
Hamlet justified?
obviously
right?
there's,
I mean,
right, exactly.
it's so interesting.
Like, and there are good and bad characters. Like Claudius is pretty obviously just a bad character in this play. He's Uncle Scar in The Lion King, for those of you who have not read Hamlet. But another in the play, I mean, he's pretty sympathetic in certain cases. Like he's praying to God, like, man, I can't pray anymore because of this awful deed that I have done. It's on my hands. Like he acknowledges that something is not right. his heart has been corrupted, and he's really sympathetic because of that. And so that's not just in Hamlet; it's another place too. Even Macbeth, which you read earlier this year, he's still a complex character with motivations and with flaws, and with obviously flaws, but with nuance. And so Shakespeare is really good at that, and Hamlet obviously is peak Shakespeare, so he's obviously really good at that here too.
Yes. I just enjoy like trying to puzzle out like I don't know what he was actually meaning, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a couple of places where there's not notes in my handy little Cheaters edition. I don't have the actual Cheaters edition with like normal English that is like
right. Yeah, exactly.
That's
Me
so
and Tanner
weird.
look down on those people, right? Don't we?
Yes, we do.
High
Those
five
are,
across space time. No, I'm kidding.
oh my gosh. Those are ugh.
Yeah.
Anyways, those are a disgrace. But like my little handy one with notes directly to the side of lines that are too confusing. But just like trying to get down to like the meaning of like one of his jokes or stuff, right? Like sometimes you think that he's so serious, and like that it's like reading the Bible, right? Like sometimes you find places where like, oh, Paul was sarcastic, right? It felt like
exactly.
that. It felt like that sometimes, right? Like
yeah.
he didn't actually mean that. He was just being sarcastic, and I'm like, huh, intriguing.
Like in Macbeth and things like that. I mean, there are comic characters. I mean, when we were watching, I don't think Tanner was there, but when my class watched a filmed production of the stage play, there's this one scene like in the middle of the darkest stuff. Like I literally think the king just got killed. Like the incident in Macbeth that kind of took everything downward. After that, just came out this random guy who just started making jokes, pretty much, and was like drunk or whatever. And it's like, man, out of nowhere, this dark, somber play, and then boom, comedy, funny. The gravedigger here, just in this somber scene, and you have the gravedigger just making jokes and stuff like that. So, yeah, and it works too. It's great.
Yeah, it's just so funny. I mean, like, I don't know. He was a genius writer.
He was. Shocker, he was.
I know, right?
Wow. Well, why Hamlet? So of all the plays, Hamlet is widely regarded as the best. Over the course of history, it's the one that has been, put forth as Shakespeare's finest work. So why is Hamlet regarded as such? What features does it have that separate it from other works?
Yeah, I think that like one of the main things about this is that like first it's like the easiest to understand for the most part, right? Like there's not really any big like wow factors, or not even wow factors, just like the Old English is not that hard in this one.
Yeah, I mean,
compared to others.
I will say, like reading Shakespeare plays, like there is a difference, and certain things of okay, this is kind of confusing and hard to understand, and this one is actually easier to understand. So yeah, I agree. I think Hamlet actually surprisingly is a bit easier to understand than some other ones, especially once you've seen a play. You can kind of follow along better as well.
Yeah. And I think that also it just has like I don't know. The characters and the like entire story is just comical in somewhat, to the fact that like seriously everybody dies but the person telling the story. And secondly, just the fact that like the entire play is constructed so that the audience knows what's happening, but
Right.
like nobody else in the play has any idea like that the characters
And that's the genius of Shakespeare, like in Romeo and Juliet too. Like, oh, spoiler alert for Romeo and Juliet if you didn't already know. But like, oh man, Romeo and Juliet they're gonna die, and the guy's got to get there in time. Oh my goodness! And you're seeing all these things come together, but the characters have no idea. That adds to the tension and adds to the, kind of tragedy of it too.
Yeah, there are a couple of times where you just want to scream at them. You're so
Right.
stupid.
Right. Yep.
Anyways, I think that that's just another part of his genius. Like you as the audience know what's happening, and you're like entirely into you're fully enveloped in the story, right? There's no actual surprises that are going to come to you, right? But to the to the actors, you're going to see something, right? Like
Yep.
they're going to be surprised, and you're going to either laugh at them, or they're going to die for not realizing it.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I think that there are several things, and as you said, you mentioned a couple of them. I think a couple other ones are like just the fact that it's one of the coolest stories. I mean, you have this political intrigue drama, this romance, this action play. All of these things are in Hamlet. You have the king who had just been killed by his brother and has taken the throne all of a sudden, and the son is left and wants revenge. You have that kind of cool plot. Then you have this other character who is desperately in love with Hamlet and then needs to break off that love for political reasons that her father is telling her to do. And then all of a sudden she goes and kills herself after another series of events. So there's a tragedy and a love story there. Then there's Hamlet just being mad and having fun and romping around the castle, and then for some reason giving incredibly introspective and deep monologues, which go down in history. Like all of those things are just, and the comedy that we were talking about, especially with the Gravedigger, and was that Act 5 or Act 4? That's Act 4, end of Act 4. All that kind of stuff. That's so fun, right? So, no, that's Act 5. Yeah, it's Scene 1 of Act 5. Actually, is it? Gosh, I don't know.
It's
But
just so
Gravedigger.
it's so well balanced, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that a lot of writers know how to like balance, or like even storytellers, just plain old storytellers, movies, books, etc. Right? Like they just don't know how to balance anymore, right?
Mhm.
Like I feel like he knew
Yes.
how to balance all
Right.
of his works, right? Even if it was a drama or if it was a
Tragedy.
I don't know, tragedy, and you also had like I don't know, the romances over here, right? All of them
Yeah.
had like the same key aspects in each of them, right? And
Yeah.
he was just able to like he would just weigh one down more, but it wouldn't take away from any of them, right? It would just
Mhm.
so it just had to be characterized as a romance because that was the key turning point of everything. All the others, the political aspect, the drama aspect, that rotated around the romance, right? At that
Yep.
point. But then in this one, the romance and the drama all flow around the political, right? So it's just so interesting, like the way that he balances it so that each aspect is so important in its own respect.
Yeah, and go back to the balancing thing too. Our kind of analysis guide that our school gave us, CC gave us, Brightest Heaven of Invention, was talking about how at the very end, spoiler alert, Hamlet dies, and how it's a cool trick Shakespeare pulls off to have Hamlet be likable enough to where it's sad when he dies, but also have him have deserved it enough to where it feels just and to where it feels deserved, right? And that's another way in which he just balances this Hamlet who we like and love, but also have seen do horrible things and potentially commit murder and go crazy and destroy relationships, and then at the end he has to die. So that dichotomy, then the dichotomy of just even the most terrible character, Claudius, how he has this inner turmoil going on, all those kind of things are going on in Hamlet and cast against a backdrop of so much intrigue and drama to where it's just exceptional. Yeah. Just exceptional.
Yeah.
By the way, I was joking about it earlier. It's not really like The Lion King. Besides an uncle stealing the throne and killing the brother, not much else like The Lion King, really.
Thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully. Yeah, me and Tanner were reading Hamlet together, and all of a sudden, this character started singing about how they couldn't wait to be king, and it was really weird. So
I know, right? I couldn't understand it. It was just so interesting.
yeah, he was like, "I cannot waiteth to be the ruler of this fine dominion," and you're like, "Whoa, okay." Anyway, does this play, Tanner, affirm revenge? Because the central plot involves Hamlet wanting to take revenge upon the killer of his father. But does the play affirm anywhere the revenge theory that revenge is just, it's needed, and it can bring conclusion to the soul?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. And like going back to what I was talking about earlier, like just like how deep Hamlet is and like all of Shakespeare's plays, like I think that he does such a great job at like having these key aspects of things that we don't like I don't know, say murder or revenge.
Yeah,
but
murder
we
most
have
foul isn't the best it is.
yeah, just like all of these things that like are wrong, right? but then he has like these other aspects that like oh, I'm sorry, my dog is barking. But just the way that his oh, words. he doesn't condemn it. Like he does not condemn it, okay?
Yeah.
He condemns it. Ha. He condemns it while still using it as like the central movement around his plot, right?
Right.
I think that he just does such a great job of like showing us how conceited Hamlet is, even if he is doing the supposedly right thing in his mind, just to like go and help his father, who he thinks is in agony because his uncle took this from him, right? But it's like the way that the plot moves and the things that he throws in there just show how like Hamlet wasn't like this amazing guy who had it all right, and his intrigue was entirely correct and morally correct. Instead, he kind of like threw in little points, just showing us he's wrong, haha. He's wrong, haha.
Yep.
But you still like Hamlet for it, right? You think that he's just deceived.
Misguided. Yeah.
Yeah, it's truly great. Like, so interesting.
Yeah. I agree with you. I don't think he affirms the revenge tactic anywhere. I mean, just look at, okay, our main character thinks revenge is right. Let's look at the end of the play. Everyone is dead. Okay, let's look at how we got here. Probably not the best way to have gotten here, to have gotten to the end. So yeah, for sure, I don't think he affirms the revenge tactic anywhere. And that's the thing about Shakespeare is he sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, pretty much always will leave up huge interpretive questions to the reader and refuses to give a decisive point of view on it. Like with Henry V, a play that we read a couple of months ago, is King Henry V, is he a good king or is he not? Both views are open, and they're both really, really well-supported views. And so in Hamlet, I don't think that Shakespeare really necessarily gives a whole lot of credence to the idea that it's a good idea, but I mean, it's certainly there, but it's definitely not portrayed in the best light in Hamlet, and I think that that's absolutely correct and biblical, in fact, because hey, vengeance is mine, says the Lord, I will repay. I think that's reflected in here for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that like that's just like another example of like the depth of Shakespeare's works, right? Like he doesn't other writers have to like set it a clear defined, this person is entirely and clearly evil for blank blank and blank, right? For these reasons, King Claudius is this entirely evil person who cannot be redeemed. Example B is going to be Hamlet, who is good in blank blank and blank and therefore cannot be wrong and cannot be deceived and is entirely correct, right? Like they have to do that in order for their stories to work. You have to have a pure light and a pure darkness in order to have a clash and make your action story work, right?
Right.
But like I think that Hamlet and Shakespeare in general just does such a great job of like saying, I don't know, this person has like done bad things in the past, but does that make his actions justifiable? No. Right? Just because he went and did something right. It's just he's so good at like showing the facts as they are in his story and not trying to hide all of the bad aspects of somebody underneath this guise of greatness.
Yeah. And that's not to say that black and white is always bad. I mean, Lord of the Rings, me and Tanner's favorite fantasy novel, is pretty black and white as compared to most things. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think there is nuance in Tolkien. But oftentimes the pendulum can swing too far the other way, where everyone is morally gray. There's no one to root for, that kind of thing. There's no moral judgment in the books, and some novels. But then Hamlet is kind of the perfect middle, where there is good and evil. Obviously, Shakespeare does not condone evil. He rejoices at good, and also has a nuanced view of his characters, which is perfect.
Yes.
So. Well, let's talk about the ghost, Tanner. Who is the ghost? Is the ghost real? Is the ghost a figment of imagination?
Oh, man.
What's up?
Okay, first of all, scientific fact states that Bruce hallucinations are highly improbable and almost psychologically impossible.
Especially
That's my
with the most like good character in the play, Horatio, when he sees it, that basically confirms.
Exactly, right? They saw a ghost, and this thing existed, sadly. What it was it now here's the real question. Was it a deceiver, or was it actually the guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that comes the question to which I have no answer.
Yeah.
What are your views?
And here's the deal. Well, so I think first we need to establish. I think that a lot of people, for good reason, assume that whenever there's an inconsistency in Shakespeare, there's a reason for that inconsistency. Like, we don't know what's up with the ghost at the very end of the play. Like, he never shows up after Hamlet kills Polonius, right? So we really don't see him again. And so we don't ever get that issue resolved, which seems like an inconsistency. Like, wouldn't the ghost come back? How are we going to resolve that plot line? And so a lot of people, and I think Shakespeare's a master. I think he's totally in control of his works. But especially with Hamlet, we have, like, pretty big differences between manuscripts and stuff. Like, did Shakespeare intend for the ghost to be carried? Like, how much do we lend to the idea that, okay, because Hamlet sees the ghost when he kills Polonius, but Gertrude does not, does that mean that it's a figment of imagination? But then also we have a kind of an inconsistency where Horatio and Marcellus and the other guard, they see the ghost as well. And so we're left with, okay, people have seen this, and they confirmed it's there, but then Hamlet sees it by himself and no one else is there. So is that the same thing? Like, what's going on here?
So does he now have a
some
figment
people-
of his imagination? It's
Right,
so,
exactly. Some people would say, okay, that's intentional, and some people would say, well, that's kind of just an accident, he messed up. And so I'm sure that Shakespeare didn't all the time perfectly line up his inconsistencies to make a point. But in this case, I think that I tend to lean towards it's probably more of a demonic thing, since we've both agreed Shakespeare does not condone the revenge tactic. The ghost is pro-revenge tactic. And eventually, Hamlet only sees the ghost. The ghost is seen by the people who will go get Hamlet. Then after Hamlet sees the ghost, then it's just a figment of his imagination, egging him on to do bad things. So I tend to think that it's more of a demonic thing. Obviously, it existed and was not just a figment of his imagination, but I think it's more of a demonic presence. But hey,
Yeah.
Scholars for 400 years have debated this and have come out on the opposite end of my view. So I'm not an expert by any means, but I'm just kind of trying to follow clues.
Yep. And I just stand on the sidelines, waving, cheering you on.
And that's honestly a smarter position to take when it comes to interpreting Shakespeare.
Yes, I'll read the articles. I won't write them.
Yeah. All right, well, Hamlet. To be or not to be speech. What do you make of that? That great classic speech. What is Hamlet talking about? Why is this speech lasted as the most infamous speech in all of history?
Because it appears to condone suicide.
I mean, yes, true.
It's, I don't know.
I mean, it's still beautiful anyway.
Exactly, sadly. See, he's so great at what he does. I think that the reason it's lasted so long is just because of, like, the contrast between the entire speech, right? He keeps on going back at himself and, like, essentially rebutting himself every time. It just gets, I don't know. It's so well written, is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, just to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's masterfully done and very, very excellent. But I think that, like, the main reason that it stuck around as far as it, like, as long as it has, and the reason why most people know the statement "to be or not to be" and associated with Shakespeare, is just the fact that it's called antithesis, right? And it essentially is just these two contrasting statements that are placed together in harmony, and it appeals to everyone to some extent, and everybody's at one point, like, had this question of, like, existence, right? And it appeals to that. It appeals to the human mind of why do we exist? Like, why is there reason to be? Or why should we not be, right?
Yeah, another reason, I mean, I think we didn't mention this at the beginning, but Hamlet, we kind of referenced it, is extremely psychological, introspective, and this is really the centerpiece of that whole part of the play. Whole part of the examination of Hamlet's grief, Hamlet's groaning in agony after his father's death and his mother's marrying his uncle, who's the murderer. And so that kind of really deep theological insight that Shakespeare gives us into Hamlet is evidenced by the outpouring of the speech that is to be or not to be.
Yes. Very well said.
Yeah. Okay, well, one last thing. Hamlet goes mad. Is that intentional madness? Is that fake madness? That's the same thing. Is it real madness? Like, what's going on?
I hold that it was the fake it until you make it perspective.
Yeah.
He faked it so long that eventually he legitimately went insane.
Okay.
And there wasn't a whole lot of question on whether he was sane or whether he was not sane. He just, eventually he got to a point where he was thinking in so illogical terms for so long that he couldn't think logically anymore, right?
Uh-huh.
All of his sidestepping eventually turned into him walking a crooked line, and he couldn't figure out how to walk straight again.
Gotcha.
That's my take on it. It's not very well backed, but it's my take.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I think it's obvious at first that he's putting on a play madness. I think that's evidenced by the text in certain spots where he's talking to himself and is like, I gotta go mad to kind of get everybody's guard down. I think he says that after he encounters the ghost for the first time. I think there's textual evidence for the idea that, okay, he is indeed going to be going mad and faking it to get close to Claudius. But then, like you said, there is evidence at the end, especially with the gravedigger scene where he kind of goes after Laertes, where he's just gone. Like, he tries to restrain himself, he's not mad anymore, and then he just kind of goes mad. So there's definitely support for that theory, and I agree. I mean, I think it's obvious that he's faking at first, but then, I mean, I don't think he's ever really completely sane at the end of the play, although he has moments of sanity for sure. So I actually probably agree with you there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cooper and Tanner agree on something other than Gandalf?
Yeah, let's do it.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to talk about with Hamlet? What's your favorite line in Hamlet? So much goodness in Hamlet.
Ooh, I don't have my book in front of me, which was a big mistake. It is literally in the other room. But I think that my favorite thing that happened was when he was my favorite section was when he was talking to Ophelia and just ripped her apart and said, "Get you to a nunnery."
Yeah, get thee to a nunnery.
Yes.
Love that. Love that line.
It was I enjoyed that part.
There are so many lines in here, like what's actually good and then what's just iconic and classic, so frailty, the name is woman, she's pretty funny. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark is obviously hilarious. Not hilarious. It's a classic iconic line. Murder most foul. Times out of joint. Brevity is the soul of wit is pretty funny. Polonius is a funny character, so I like brevity is the soul of wit coming from him. But yeah, there's a lot of good lines in Hamlet. So
yes, so hard to choose one.
Yep. Well, I wish we had more time. We could go back and talk about the characters: Hamlet, Claudius, Ophelia, Laertes, things like that. Hamlet
we could do an
deserves
episode
so
on
much
each.
more.
They're so deep.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm sure there have been done. By the way, Tanner's doing a class through Circe. Well, I think Circe is a podcast called The Play's the Thing. They talk about Shakespeare's plays, and they do an act-by-act discussion. So I recommend that podcast. They've done a couple episodes on Hamlet. So if you want a more in-depth act-by-act discussion, they have hour-and-a-half long podcasts on each act. So you can get your in-depth study there. Well, Tanner, let's do some donor shout-outs. Where would someone go if they wanted a donor shout-out?
They would go to patreon.com/bookinit and subscribe to any of our $5 and up tiers.
That's correct. You get cool stuff behind the paywall as well. Cool posts that we do, cool videos and episodes as well if you support at $10 a month. So a lot of fun over there. $5 a month, though, gets you the shout-out. So I'll say the shout-out. Nope, I'll say the patron, and then you will say if they are going to be or not be. No, that's a joke. We're not going to do that. You will say if they
We'll go read Hamlet.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Nana.
Yes.
Vin, Pepe, and Wheela.
Yes.
Mike and Sylvia.
Yes.
Mike and Laura.
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Becky.
Yes.
Lizzie.
Yes.
Keenan.
Yes.
That's right, folks. All of you should go read Hamlet, watch a play, watch a production.
There was
that
a
helps
point
lot.
behind this one.
It's right. That's right. I mean, when you said like 4 in a row, I was like, oh, okay. I don't know. Like, donor shoutouts are weird. Like, sometimes you think somebody's doing something consistently, then they just screw it up at the very end. And so I had no idea if that was going to be the case or not, but I assumed, at least after the 4th one, that it was not going to be the case like that. So,
way to go,
well, guys,
Cooper.
hope you enjoyed that episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a discussion on Brandon Sanderson. Make sure you check out our podcast, The Screening. In the meantime, next week, we're talking about La La Land, I believe. So that'll be fun. And we're looking forward to these upcoming episodes and finishing off the school year strong. Until next time.
Keep on booking it.